Hello, good afternoon. So thank you for that excellent welcome. And hopefully what I have to share with you today will be useful in terms of how you want to think about AI for your business. We've seen a lot of amazing innovation coming out of the B1 partners and customers around the world. And I want to share a little bit of that with you today. And hopefully it might spark some ideas about how it might be useful for your business. So one thing I always talk about in terms of why this is important and why we should care is obviously in terms of market dynamics, we've seen this huge push for productivity over the years. And obviously we went through a massive reshoring, or as I say, offshoring, where we started to make use of low-cost labor and we gained productivity that way. And we've made all of these investments into RPA, machine learning, process mining, all sorts of things, right, in order to improve that productivity curve. And we're kind of getting to the point with our ERP systems and these systems of record. And we don't just do work, obviously, in ERP, but we do a lot of work in other areas like banking, trade finance, and insurance, where we're actually running out of ways to gain productivity. And humans, people, are spending so much time in compliance, data, manual processing that they're not actually free to do the work that they should be doing or the interesting work. And so a lot of what we do every day is showing people around how you can now leverage AI to get rid of all that manual labor. Like if you've ever used ChatGPT, you probably know that ChatGPT gets you 80% of the way if you're lucky, maybe 40% if it's not a good day or not a good prompt. But at least it gets you going, right? And it does improve your productivity. And there's a lot of conversation about what Gen AI is and kind of where it fits. And I kind of want to touch on a few areas because I think the space is so hot. It's evolving so rapidly. We talk about Gen AI and RPA and LLMs, and everyone kind of uses the same language and everyone's doing slightly different things. So I just want to touch on that for a second. So foundation models. So this is Gartner's chart. So this was back last year when Gartner was profiling the market. I'm waiting for the latest research to come out. So had this been a week later, this would have been an updated chart. But essentially, if you think about it, you've got these foundation models like OpenAI and others that are putting huge amounts and billions of dollars into creating large language models. And so what we do is we leverage that investment that has been made to create something that is more specific into these domain models here. And the important part of that is that now we can create models that are really specific to ERP, to SAP, and to those practices that now work in a compliant way to get things done for your business. And then obviously you've got all sorts of other things, obviously NVIDIA, enabling tools, and others that I'm sure you read about in the market today. I also want to talk about the different types of AI. So as we expand on that concept of foundational models and domain models and kind of how the market is evolving, and you've probably heard the words co-pilot, co-worker, LLM, and all sorts of things. So LLMs are what we consider to be foundational models. And so if you've ever used ChatGPT, you know that it's basically probabilistic. So based on the prompt that you've given it and the massive amounts of training data that it has, it's going to basically connect words together in a way that it thinks that you want, essentially is what it's doing, right? But it doesn't do work. It doesn't run a process. So if you now ask it to create an email, it's not going to be the thing that sends the email to that customer, but it will create the email template for you to then put into your mailbox and then edit it and then send it to your customer. And so you've got these kind of generative AI, foundational models, generative AI, and then where we're moving to, and if you've seen anything about what Salesforce has been talking about, I think SAP is starting to talk about this, Christian Klein, is this concept of purposeful AI. And so what we have really done at MyWave is we've said, let's take all of that capability of foundational AI, Gen AI, and let's now put it into a framework that does work. So another word for it is also Agentic AI. So that is really where you now have these little agents that are trained on specific domains that are able to do work for you based on you prompting it or you saying what you want it to do. So it could be creating a sales order from a purchase order, it could be creating a goods receipt from a production order, it could be creating a service call, whatever that is. It actually can now do the work for you and do it faster, easier, quicker, and make your life a little bit easier. And we'll be showing you, I maybe have too many demos, I have 5 demos, but we'll be showing you some examples of how that's being used today. And I think why we're here today and why we're here with Aclaros is the exciting part of it as well is that because of the way that we can now innovate and leverage this technology, is creating this innovation is very quick and very easy. I'll tell you a true story. I was going to have 6 demos today, but I couldn't actually figure out how to get a production order created in SAP Business One, because while I'm an AI expert, I'm not a B1 expert, and I actually have no idea how to use it. So I was actually contemplating creating a wave process that would allow me to create a production order in SAP, because ultimately that would have been easier for me. And so what we've basically done now is that we've created a tool set. We call it the Innovation Hub, so you'll see it far on the left there, which means that now any of these agentic AI use cases can now be configured very quickly. And when I say quickly, I mean in like, for a simple use case, maybe half a day to a day. A complex use case might be a couple of days, maybe a week if we're all feeling a little bit lazy. But essentially, we can now create any type of use case. And so you'll see some examples of this today. But what I'd love for you to be thinking about is what other areas might be interesting for you to actually automate, optimize, and make more efficient in your business. And Aclaros, as one of our partners, are now trained in being able to create these agentic AI solutions. And they can do it very, very quickly, and they can do it very, very well. And so what basically happens here is that when we talk about these agents, you'll have various domain process models that are created. So that could be a goods receipt, it could be creating an SO from a PO. As I mentioned, we do banking, so it could be the creation of letter of credit, it could be maintenance orders, it could be anything at an infinity. And these agents can also work together to create end-to-end processes and solutions as well. And that all comes together to create this kind of co-worker style experience. And when you think about it, for us, a big focus is not just to give insights, although you can create waves that give insights, but to actually build that intelligence into the process that allows you to also then drive that end-to-end outcome. So we have built pre-configured connectivity into the web extension for SAP. It can also sit into the FAT client as well. And that can also go across any system of record, right? So obviously we work through the service layer into SAP Business One, but as you'll see, we have use cases where we're now connecting all sorts of other data into it. So it could be government data, it could be credit risk analysis data, it could be banking data, it could be Shopify data, it could be anything else as well. And the agents are able to work across those things. With a little bit more effort, you can also put it out into your end consumer experiences as well. So if you wanted to create more direct-to-consumer models and you wanted to have them leveraging their own agents, you can do that, and you can have that working seamlessly across your organization. I guess the main point of this is that when we start to look at these use cases and as we kind of go through some of these examples, one thing we are finding very heavily is that we have now over 100 use cases that have been created. We call them waves, but they're basically processes or agents. And we're finding that the productivity lift is normally between 40 and 70%. In fact, I think the example that Irina is going to show in a minute, it might be even a 90% productivity increase. So the gains are actually very, very large. And a lot of the kind of areas that we're getting used in is replacing tech debt. We're also replacing the traditional UI. So as I mentioned, you don't actually have to know how to use SAP Business One to use MyWave. So if you've got areas in your business that have large turnover and you don't want to have to keep training people, you can just put in an agent that will take the person through the process and they'll be able to do it. And you can also unify silos. I know we had a long conversation in the integration workshop around how we connect multiple B1 instances together. So if you've got multiple databases, you can create agents that will now work across those multiple databases and actually give you single views of various areas of your business, or it could be duplicating data across multiple areas or anything else that you want to do as well. And other areas in eliminating human error, it's very hard to actually make a mistake when you're being guided through a process. And there's a whole lot of other things as well as we kind of go through the demos and the use cases. So now that we've kind of covered, I guess, where it fits, I want to take you through a few areas of where we're seeing it being used and where I think are kind of some really interesting use cases. This is an example of actually creating visit reports in SAP Business One and also getting customer details. So what we normally do is we show the before and the after. So you'll be very familiar with this. So it's like, how do I get customer details? I go into my Business One account and I then search for it and I look for it. And you can say, well, how long does that normally take me? How do I go and find it? So this is the before. And then this is the after. You just say what you want it to do, and it will go and get that for you. And, there's a lot of big bets being made on these conversational interfaces, as like the Gen Zs the millennials were a bit old now, but the Gen Zs and everyone into the workforce. We're now starting to really want to use more, how do I say, easy to use interfaces. And there's nothing easier than talking to your computer or talking to your phone. I think this is another one where we're getting stock quantities. So you could log in, you could go do that, you could look for it. You're going to see a theme here, guys. There's a theme. You go through this whole process, or you just type into your MyWave. And what you can do is you can prompt it. So what it's now basically doing is it says, okay, I now know what rainbow printer ink is. I've got a match for it. And it's smart enough to say, if I don't know what that is, it will come back and say, sorry, I couldn't figure that out. And then we'll give you another prompt to kind of come back. This one's probably one of my favorite ones. So creating a visit report. So we were working with another customer, and they basically said, we never create visit reports because they're irritating and annoying to do, and they take time, and I don't really see, I don't want to log in, and I don't want to go do this whole rigmarole. So we said, okay, cool. Like, let's use the Gen AI capability to make that a bit easier for you. And so instead of now having to log in and create it when you get back to the office and spending, I think it's almost 2 minutes, maybe more than 2 minutes on that. We have sped these up, but we probably could speed them up a little bit more. This is why visit reports don't get created. I'm already bored. Okay. All right, are we done yet? Okay, I think we're done. Cool. Now we get to the fun part. So what we basically did here is we showed how you can actually use the voice capability on your phone to very easily now just talk to your phone. You could be in the car, driving back, talk whatever you want. You can put it in, and then the Gen AI capability is then going to format that into a report that you set it up that you want, that kind of gives you the outline of the things that you want. And there's the report that is created there, and then that gets submitted as an activity against your customer account. So that's one example. This one is a really fun one. I say fun, maybe not fun, but interesting one. Sorry, this is my job, this is my life. I find these things fun. So basically this one, it was with a partner in the UK, and for their customer, they essentially wanted to create a business record in SAP. And I hadn't realized, but when I was in Germany 2 weeks ago with Rainer, he said, yeah, I've actually seen this working where the person doing this is going into the government database to check their real company, then they're getting the credit information, and then they're getting the customer information, and they're emailing for approval to their boss. So even this is probably a very straightforward way that this process actually kind of happens. But we're showing all the different places you have to go to actually get the information that you need to create this particular customer record in SAP, and it's effort, and there's time involved, and you have to get it right, and all that sort of thing. And you may need to go and get approvals, and you might need to log into CreditSafe to check that they're a good company and in good standing, because most of them have business rules, right, around how you're going to set this up. You learn a lot about all the different industries when you're supporting them in creating agents that do this work. Okay, so we're still going. Yeah. All right. I think we're almost done. We might have to speed this up to 3x. Right, is the business, okay, cool, we're done. So this one now is that we actually did with a partner so this is that partner, so they had a customer that needed this. So you create a record for a user VAT number, and then what the agent is doing is it's now fetching the data of this company from the government database now, so this is outside of B1, even though you're in B1. It's now confirming all these details. You could skip them, but we wanted to show that we're actually bringing all that detail back from that registry. And then what's also happening as we get a bit further on is that you'll see is that there's actually logic that we've built into this process that now actually, depending on the credit score of the company, will say, yes, you can just add them in, or might require additional approval steps or additional requirements. And so you can see there's a pretty significant time saving, right? And it probably is even more, right, realistically. And so that was probably one of my favorite ones. I didn't think that that would be such a big deal, but it actually turned out to be a really good use case. This one. This one was for a partner or customer in India. I do apologize, it's on S4 public. This particular one, we do work on B1 and S4. But this one is creating a goods receipt from a purchasing document. And so we were just kind of showing the before and after on this one. And I think one thing I want to kind of highlight is where we see the key areas is getting information into SAP, right? Where you have documents, you're using OCR, you may be using something that's a bit clunky, it's not, worth EDIing. That's normally a really great target for a use case. The other area is getting information out of SAP, or it's in processes where you need to now weave in other areas of information into your process, so like the government registry or the government database. But I wanted to put this one in here because I think it shows how well the LLMs work without any additional training. This is a standard model that we've used. So essentially you can now go and just take, and if you know what the formatting is like on a PDF, right? Like it gives you nothing. You can copy it and it's basically an absolute, mess. But essentially what you can do is you can now copy from a standard PDF, and we've basically then prompted, in the background there's prompts that are running all of these processes. And we've prompted it now to actually extract all the correct information to now create your goods receipt from that purchase order document. So that's, makes it very, very quick and easy as well. What else do we have? Plant maintenance. This is another one. So you want to create a maintenance request and you're an engineer and you maybe have, gloves on, or, you don't want to kind of take too much time to create a maintenance request, and you don't want to log into a system like this to do it. So that was another use case that we have seen coming into the market. I wanted to show a broad range, right? I wanted to kind of get a feel for all the types of things you can do with it. As I said, we've got almost 100 now. These are just some of my favorites that I've personally been involved in. So all the process that you have to go through and, selecting things in the system. You're probably very familiar with this type of thing. Okay, are we done? All right, we're submitting it. All right. Now the fun part. So you could talk to your phone or you could type this. But you could say like maintenance needed for a particular piece of machinery. And it's using the SAP master data to know what machinery that is. You can say it's making a clanking and a hissing noise. I think it's some kind of issue like this. This is me, by the way. I know nothing about maintenance, so I made this particular issue up. But then what it does is it pulls all this information, from the master data. So we set it up to be able to do that. And then that gets fully submitted. So that's submitting everything, including the cause of the issue, and that's already done. So not as big a time saving, but I think still quite a good one. And then now,
this one's going to be good.
Now we're at the good part. So I'll pass over to Arena. And this might be one of the best use cases that we've saved for last.
Thanks, Amy. Thank you. Minimum inventory updates. A question that we get asked very often is, does the system update minimum inventories dynamically? And you all know the answer is no, it's a manual process. Okay, we have to say this time and time again, but we get asked this very, very often. Okay, so first we're going to do is we're going to take a look at what it takes to update your minimum inventory. And when I say that, I don't just mean go into SAP, click the field, and put in a number. Okay, because everybody can do that. The important thing is, what should that number actually be? That is way more important than updating the actual number itself, okay? So some key things that people look at when they're looking to determine their inventory is, one, how much stock are we moving over a period? That translates to your average daily usage, okay? Then we look at how long does it take to replenish our stock? That is our lead time. And look at how confident do we want to be when a customer asks, do you have this in stock? Okay, and that is what is a Z-score. That is an industry standardized thing that we just pull in. Okay. Now, I'm not going to bore everyone with too much statistics here, but just to understand what is happening on the background. Okay, the minimum inventory is a combination of your lead time demand plus your safety stock. Okay, your lead time is your average daily usage times your lead time. Okay, so that gives us how long does it take for me to get back to my average amount of inventory that I'm selling. Safety stock being your Z score, so that safety requirement that you're looking for, or that confirmation of confidence you want to give your customer, plus your demand standard deviation times the lead time. Again, it's not a statistics class. I had to relearn how to do standard deviations doing this. ChatGPT actually helped me with that, but we really got further. Now, if we had to do this manually, and this is really what we're trying to get to, is you have to extract the sales data from SAP, okay, to go and find your average daily usage. You then have to pull the item's lead time, not very difficult. We all know how to run a query to get that information. But then we have to calculate that daily average usage. Again, still pretty basic. And then we calculate the lead time demand by multiplying those two components. Then we have to calculate the demand standard deviation. Okay, now that, again, if people know, depending on how big your time frame is that you pick, the longer that takes, because it's your average minus that day, and you're adding, and to get to eventually to your standard deviation. That calculates your safety stock. Then you calculate the minimum inventory, taking all these components, and only then do you go and update the item master data. That process takes about 10 minutes per item per warehouse. Okay, so if you're doing it by warehouse, more or less if you're doing it on an item per item basis. Now, if we do this by MyWave, here we can see our minimum inventory for this item right now. I think it says there is 17. Okay, so this is just to prove the point of the inventory itself. Okay. Now we're going into MyWave, and we're going to just prompt it to say, update minimum inventory. So you can, this is where the LLM of it all comes in, where you can have a little bit more conversational about it. I'm just saying update min, but you can say, please update my minimum inventory stock. You can be a little bit more polite with the machine. But I'm going to do it by item group. So that's our selection. You can also do it by manufacturer. And these things can also change. This is just sort of the process that we went through. Now, okay, we're going to select our item group. Okay. Our item group is, we're going to pick it by computers, and we're going to continue on. Now we can pick the number of days of average usage that you have. And this may be different for people. Depending on what you're selling, your business could be seasonal, right? There's some products you may be wanting to have different average daily use times with. Okay. Now we can select our service level score. Now this is, we're going through all of these steps because I may be the first time I'm updating minimum inventory. I don't know what we're doing here. Okay. So now it gives me my options here to say, this is what the current minimum stock is, this is what the new minimum stock is. So it's gone and done all of that logic for you in the back end. And now you can pick what you're selecting and go and continue and update that in SAP. So again, it asks if you want to confirm, and you just go ahead and say yes. So now all that work that took all of 10 minutes, you're coming down to a minute per item. Okay? And if we start thinking about doing this on a larger scale, this really becomes a lot more powerful to do. And you can do it. So now this 17, if we refresh it, it updates to R3. Okay. Now this is the 1 minute example. This is somebody who's never done it before. They have to be prompted. They have to be asked the questions. But when you get to a pro that says, I just know what I'm looking for. I know the item I want to update, and I know that I want to do by item group. I know what I want, my service level, the average daily sales. Just put that all in, and it'll only prompt you for the information that you have left out. Okay. So in this example, update stock minimum. By item group, I want a 90% service level score, and make the daily average, threw in a spelling mistake there to really make it work, for 50 days, and let's go. So the only thing that it's going to ask me now is, okay, what item group are we doing it for? This is the only information that we're missing in this. And so that really now takes it from, you're spending a lot more of your time talking, typing than you are doing really anything else. You're really focusing more on where you're looking. So here again, we can see the minimum inventory that we're updating, and we continue it on, and we can update the system. So what this kind of gets to is not just the LLM side of it, but also that you can build logic into these, okay? So this is something that's pretty standard in the industry to do from inventories, but if there's something that you want to do, that you want to build it in, and you want to have this usability, this is where we can build it in. Our dev team did this really closely with Amy and her team, and we learned a lot in the process of doing this, and really the extent that we can push this. Now, the other thing that comes in, we get asked often, is lead times. Are there a suggestion of a dynamic things on lead times? We're using that lead time in our calculating our minimums, but that's the lead time our vendor told us they're going to do it by. That's not necessarily the lead time that things are actually coming in on. So if we want to start seeing what is the average time that it takes for us to do this, here again we can see on the item master data our lead time here, and what we're essentially doing is we're just using the standard SAP models, the calculation views in there. It says we just want to do a lead time update. Okay? And what we're finding is over a certain period of time, and we can adjust that period to say, how long is it actually taking this vendor to get the information back to us? So we're going to do it for Acme Associates. We want to update all of their items, and we are going to select the items. So here we can now see the lead time was 60 days, and our recommended time is actually 65. Because although they are telling us it's 60, it's not. It's taking longer. So that can help us now also with our minimum inventory, right? Because now we have a more realistic view on what our lead time is, but also what that looks like.
That's cool. I haven't seen that one, guys. Sorry.
Yeah. That one came out yesterday. Okay. Here. Oh, questions?
Mostly showcase fetch and receive type of situations, but let's say, for instance, that a customer refuses to use any sort of technology and faxes in a sheet, right? And we can make that into a PDF or something. Is there a way to upload something into MyWave so that it then converts into something directly necessary?
Yes, yes. You can have an upload field.
Right.
Yeah. And it's very similar, right? Sorry, I should expand on that. It's very similar in the way that it extracted information. What we do is we upload the PDF, we scrape the data off, we chuck it to the LLM. It works in a very similar way.
Okay.
Like, not taking it too elaborately, but say you wanted to raise your service level. So you said, look, we really feel like we're not doing as well as we should do, so let's raise that minimum inventory, take the risk out of it. Can you just run a test case and say, okay, that's going to cost X at the end? So you didn't do it, you just sort of ran it, but never implemented it, just to say, what's the dollars involved in that?
For sure. So that we could do, because it'll always give you the recommendations to say this is what it is now, and this is what we are saying that it is. And so we can add another step to that to say, and this is what it's going to cost you to make that change on there as well before you actually commit to it. So yeah, we can get into more like a simulated way of, so we are doing kind of like an if analysis before you actually commit to that to see what is your actual cost. And you can even go a step further to compare it to like what your average price is over time. Maybe it can fetch the volume break discounts that you have from that vendor, saying yeah, you can get more so that you're getting a better safety stock level, better customer satisfaction. Oh, and by the way, there's a volume break here that's happening too. So yeah, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Can it also scrape the web? So if we have an item that's $100 and everyone must comply to selling it for $100, we say, hey, is any of our customers in this region selling it for more or less than what it should be? Can it also web scrape like that?
I haven't seen the use case for web scraping. Technically, you could make it work if you could scrape the data and then put that into a wave, yes. As long as your customers don't get grumpy for web scraping. We did have a partner that we were working with that got into a lot of trouble for web scraping.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alex?
Yeah. If we, for example, wanted to trial just one of the things that you've demonstrated there, is it as simple as just contacting you and saying we want to have a go at that and plugging it in and away we go?
I think it just depends on what the waves are. So some of the waves that I just showed, like the inventory and the lead, like that's under the Aclaros umbrella. So absolutely, we can definitely give that a try. The ones that Amy showcased are ones that were specifically done with customers, like with their intention. So if you want to try the ones that are here, there's also a starter pack that have some starting point. I'll let Amy sell her stuff.
Yeah. But I think quite a few of those waves that I showed, we produce through our own wave factory, so we own them as well. So we can provide those through Aclaros to you guys. So a lot of it, and I didn't want to get too technical today and show how you prompt the AI behind the scenes, but those prompt definitions we can share with them. So if there's anything you're interested in today, let us know and we'll work with them on making sure they have what they need.
Thank you.
The one you showed around inputting the business partner and having to check the credit and all that, does that work in Canada too?
I assume so. You probably have that was done in the UK, but I assume you have very similar government databases. So what we would just do is we create an info plugin that called those instead of the UK ones, or these guys would, and then you would have a wave that would work in a very similar way.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
In a couple of them, you have to know like a code, either like a speed code or like I think the other one was a machine code. Is that like, are you going to need to know that specific code, or can you get close and figures it out?
So it depends how the data is stored in SAP, right? And you can set it up to be like a product name or a code. But if you don't know the machine code, and we still need to know that code to say associated work order against it, if you don't type it in or you don't type it in right, or you type in, I think if you partially type it in, the LLM will figure it out for the most part. But if it doesn't, what basically happens is that it's smart enough to say, okay, this bit I didn't get, and then it will come back and it'll give you a list to then kind of choose from. So when you saw with Arena and she showed the two examples, like the power user who did everything in the prompts, and then like the person that kind of just did something basic and was stepped through everything, those are the prompts that basically sit behind it. So essentially every time you prompt it, it's saying, do I have everything? And then if it doesn't have everything, it will come back and kind of validate it with you.
Just to clarify, were you referring to the customer code, that like G whatever code was that was in the UK database that they had to refer back to?
At one point, I think a SKU was going in, and then at one point, I think it was the machine code or something.
Yeah, it
Okay.
was, I think, the maintenance one where
Oh,
like the
okay.
engineer knew the machine code.
Right.
They probably, the engineers do know the machine codes. Like I remember I did one of these with somebody that manufactured car parts, and we said, oh, we can make you a pretty one that you just put in like a Ford F-150 engine. They're like, no. We know all the part numbers that we want. We just want to search by part number. So it kind of done a little bit as well to the people that are actually using it as well.
So the first few demos that you did where you were just putting the prompt in, when will functionality like that be available? Is that with the web client, or is that something that can be cleared in that?
Yeah, so you can access it through the web client, but we have to install the MyWave plugin, right? So that's just the first part that it has, because it is an extension to SAP. It is not a native part of SAP. So that portion just needs to be installed, and then then we'll have to work on what the waves are, like what is it that you're actually trying to accomplish with these. But it is also possible in the thick client. So in the dashboard, which a lot of people don't use necessarily, is there's a browser widget that can also be an application. So it can be embedded on the client desktop as well. It's not a web client only thing.
Sorry, so I have a question. So for my company, for vendor payments,
Yeah.
so usually we generate a list of vendors through Payment Wizard, and then we upload the exe file to the bank. So can MyWave basically automate the entire process, where we can say, pick up these vendor codes and then create a Payment Wizard and then transfer it to the bank, like a payment?
Yeah, that should be possible as long as your bank has some kind of connectivity for us to pass that through. Then yes, that definitely is possible.
Well, do you work with, because we use RBC.
Mm-hmm.
So do you know if have you worked with like RBC?
No, but we can have a conversation.
You'd have to speak with RBC direct. Like,
Yeah.
They don't give, you have to request that functionality.
Yeah.
They usually give you, if you want to upload files automatically,
Yeah.
you need to get permission from them, and they'll give you like a secure file transfer protocol
I
link
think
that you can upload the files.
because we used to, we were with HSBC and then we moved to RBC. So I think RBC does have something
They
where
will.
they have like a plugin directly to SAP.
Yeah,
So I would assume MyWave can.
yeah,
Okay.
can use that. But they will, I mean, obviously with the open banking standards that have come out have made banks have to be a lot more open than they used to be. So I would be very surprised if they didn't. But it's just, as you say, a matter of making sure that we have the right permission to do that.
So in the example where you're, I think, copying a PDF,
Yeah.
how much training does that then result in for, let's say us going back to our customer saying, actually, if you can include it this way or that way, right? Does that happen a lot, or does the AI just figure it out and you don't even have to train your clients?
We wanted to prove that we could use a standard model without any training. So we hadn't trained that model at all, because essentially what we're doing is that we're extracting just the plain text, and we're asking the LLM to then extract the information using basically the code words that we expect to be on there. So as long as all of your customers use similar nomenclature, which I would assume they do, then it will work very well. The formatting of it doesn't really matter.
In that example, was that the GPT model that was
Yes.
connected?
Yeah. We tend to use the GPT model just because it's cost effective and we can set it up to be secure and private. But we do have other models that we are working with, like the Llama one as well. We've gotten some testing. But again, we've just tested the GPT model very extensively, so that's normally the one we recommend. And it's the cheapest.
Sorry, last question. Can we also build our own flow rather than, I know you've trained Atlas on how to
Yeah.
build these flows.
Yeah.
Can end users themselves you'd like basic flow?
Yeah, I think normally we'd recommend that you do that through Atharos so that you kind of have some kind of like control over that, because obviously we've got the direct relationship with them. So we don't work directly with customers,
Yeah.
but there's nothing stopping you if they're happy to enable you to kind of maintain some of your own flows and work through that, then we do have some partners that are allowing that.
We'll allow it.
Thank you.
Yeah.